Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the International Space Station, watching the massive crystalline ship approach Earth with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The Meridian vessel dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, its translucent hull refracting sunlight in patterns that seemed to defy physics itself. "They're requesting permission to dock," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from behind her. "Again, they're insisting on using their own protocols." Chen sighed, running her fingers through her graying hair. The Meridians had arrived 3 weeks ago, bringing with them promises of advanced technology and guidance for humanity's primitive civilization. Their condescension was becoming harder to bear with each passing day. "Let them dock," she ordered, "but maintain our biocontainment procedures, regardless of their protests." The Meridian ship's docking procedure was flawless, as always. Their ambassador, who called himself First Light of Dawn, emerged from the airlock in what appeared to be living armor that shifted colors with each movement. His silver-scaled skin and elongated features gave him an almost mythological appearance. "Admiral Chen," he said, his universal translator converting his crystalline language into crisp English, still insisting on these primitive quarantine measures. "Your species' paranoia continues to amuse us." Chen kept her face neutral, though her jaw tightened slightly. "Standard protocol, Ambassador. We've learned hard lessons about biological contamination throughout our history." First Light made a gesture that might have been the equivalent of rolling his eyes. "Your species is barely 1,000 years into civilization. We have guided hundreds of young races to enlightenment. Your protocols are unnecessary. Our biology is far too advanced to pose any risk to you." As they walked toward the conference room, Shen noticed the familiar shimmer in the air around the ambassador, the biofields that the Meridians used to protect themselves from primitive contamination. The irony wasn't lost on her. The meeting proceeded as the others had First Light outlining the Meridians' grand plan to uplift humanity, to guide them away from their destructive tendencies and toward a more civilized existence. Shen recognized the language of colonizers from humanity's own history. It wasn't until 3 hours into the meeting that everything changed. First Light suddenly stopped mid-sentence, his silver skin taking on an unusual sheen. "I feel strange," he said, his translator glitching slightly. "This is impossible." Chen watched as the ambassador's living armor began to ripple in unusual patterns. The other human officials in the room tensed, but she raised a hand for calm. Years of military experience had taught her to recognize pivotal moments. This was one of them. "What's happening to me?" First Light demanded, his usual composure cracking. "Your containment protocols. They're not just for protection, are they? What are you?" Chen leaned forward. "We tried to tell you about our biological peculiarities, Ambassador, about why we're so careful with cross-contamination. You dismissed our warnings as primitive paranoia." The truth was becoming clear to First Light as his biological sensors finally detected what human scientific instruments had discovered weeks ago. Human biochemistry was unique in a way that no one could have predicted. The complex proteins and enzymes that made up human cellular structure had an unprecedented ability to interface with and modify other biological systems. You're changing my armor's molecular structure," First Light gasped, watching this his living armor began to synchronize with the human biological patterns it had been exposed to. "This is impossible. We are the most biologically advanced species in the galaxy." Chen stood, her voice firm but not unkind. "Age doesn't always equal advancement, Ambassador. Sometimes the primitive species you dismiss have evolved in ways you never considered. We're not trying to harm you. We tried to prevent this, but you insisted on prolonged exposure, dismissed our containment protocols." The ambassador's armor had now completely synchronized with human biochemical patterns, its color matching the blue of Chen's uniform. First Light stared at it in horror, finally understanding that humanity's primitive biology was anything but. "What are you going to do with this ability?" he whispered. Chen's expression remained neutral, but her eyes carried the weight of the decision humanity had already made. That depends entirely on how the Meridian Alliance chooses to proceed from here. We don't want to be uplifted, Ambassador. We don't want to be guided or controlled. We want to be respected as equals. As First Light was rushed back to his ship by his attendants, Shen watched from the observation deck once again. She knew that everything would change now. The Meridians would soon discover that every piece of their biotechnology that had been in prolonged contact with humans had been subtly altered, synchronized to human biological patterns in ways their sensors were only now beginning to detect. Humanity hadn't wanted this power. They had discovered it by accident and tried to prevent its effects. But the Meridians' arrogance had forced their hand. Now the galaxy would have to come to terms with the fact that the primitive humans had an ability that could fundamentally alter the biotechnology that most advanced races relied upon. The price of underestimating humanity was about to become very clear indeed. Dr. Maya Patel stood in the secure laboratory beneath Geneva, watching the holographic display of molecular interactions with a mixture of fascination and horror. The Meridian biotechnology samples were still changing, 3 months after their first exposure to human biochemistry. It's not just synchronization anymore, she explained to the assembled world leaders on their secure screens. Their technology is actively seeking to mirror human biological patterns. It's like we've become a template that their living technology wants to follow. General Marcus Thompson, the newly appointed head of Earth's Defense Council, leaned forward in his chair. And you're certain they can't reverse this process? The Meridian's own data confirms it, Maya replied, pulling up another hologram. Their attempts to purge the human synchronized components actually accelerated the transformation. Every countermeasure they've tried has failed. The Chinese premier's voice crackled through the speakers. And what of the Meridian ultimatum? The room fell silent. Everyone had seen the transmission broadcast across every channel 2 days ago. The Meridian Alliance demanding that humanity surrender themselves for containment and study or face immediate extinction. Their ambassador's living armor was still changing, still spreading the human synchronization pattern through their ships like a cascade effect. We've confirmed their fleet movements, Thompson reported. 37 capital ships moving toward our solar system. Their bioweapons are supposedly capable of reducing Earth to primordial soup. They're terrified, Maya interjected, drawing surprised looks. Don't you see? Everything they built their civilization on, their living ships, their biological computers, their synthetic ecosystems, it's all vulnerable to our influence. Just by existing, we threaten their entire way of life. President Chen of the North American Alliance spoke next. Dr. Patel, your team has been studying this phenomenon since first contact. What options do we have? Maya took a deep breath. She had hoped this moment wouldn't come, but she had prepared for it nonetheless. We've developed what we call the Echo Protocol. It's essentially weaponizing our biological uniqueness. She brought up new diagrams showing modified human protein structures. We can artificially accelerate the synchronization effect, make it spread faster through their biotech systems. More importantly, we can control what patterns their technology synchronizes to. And what would that do to them? Someone asked. At best, it would render their technology inert. At worst, Maya paused, it could cause their living ships to break down entirely. We're talking about complete technological collapse for any Meridian fleet that engages us. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Humanity had never wanted this power, had tried to warn the Meridians about the risks of cross-contamination. Now they were being forced to use it as a weapon. How quickly can you implement this protocol? Thompson asked. We've already begun production of the delivery systems, Maya admitted. Orbital platforms could be ready in 2 weeks. But, she hesitated, there's something else you need to know. Our latest tests suggest the synchronization effect might be permanent and hereditary in Meridian biotechnology. If we do this, we're not just defending Earth. We're fundamentally altering their civilization's future. The Russian president's deep voice filled the room. They gave us no choice. They dismissed our warnings, ignored our sovereignty, and now threaten our extinction. Sometimes the best defense is demonstrating that the cost of attack is too high. One by one, the world leaders voted. The Echo Protocol would be deployed. Humanity would survive, but the price would be transforming their would-be conquerors' technology forever. As Maya left the meeting, she found Admiral Chen waiting in the hallway. The woman who had first discovered the synchronization effect during that fateful meeting on the ISS looked tired but resolute. Did we just become the monsters they feared we were? Maya asked quietly. Chen shook her head. No, Doctor. We became what we had to become to survive. The Meridians' fear and arrogance made this weapon necessary. Let's hope they learn wisdom before they force us to use it. Above them, through layers of steel and earth, the stars wheeled silently. Somewhere out there, a Meridian fleet approached, its living ships still unknowing that their greatest strength was about to become their ultimate vulnerability. The galaxy was about to learn that dismissing humanity as primitive had been a mistake of cosmic proportions. The Meridian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, their crystalline ships casting prismatic shadows across the void. Admiral Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the UEAS, defiant as 37 capital ships moved into attack formation, their bioorganic hulls pulsing with stored energy. Echo platforms report ready, Lieutenant Santos announced, his voice steady despite the tension. All satellites are in optimal position. Chen nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Meridian ships were beautiful, their living technology representing millions of years of evolution and engineering. In less than an hour, that technology would begin to turn against them. They're broadcasting, Communications Officer Park reported. System-wide. The holographic display flickered to life, showing High Commander Eternal Dawn of the Meridian Alliance. His silver-scaled face showed no emotion, but the living armor he wore rippled with patterns that humans had learned to recognize as anxiety. Primitive species of Earth, he began, his translator converting the crystalline tones to flat English. Your biological contamination of Ambassador Firstlight and his vessel represents an unacceptable threat to galactic civilization. You will surrender immediately for containment and study, or we will sterilize your world. Chen took a deep breath, remembering Dr. Patel's words during their last briefing. Once the Echo Protocol was activated, there would be no going back. The Meridian's technology would be forever changed, and with it, the balance of power in the galaxy. This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Fleet, she responded. We warned you about biological compatibility issues. We attempted to maintain quarantine protocols. You dismissed our concerns and now threaten our extinction because of your own mistakes. We ask you one final time. Withdraw your fleet and recognize Earth's sovereignty. The High Commander's armor rippled with what they now knew was derision. You are children playing with forces you don't understand. Your quarantine protocols were primitive superstition. Your contamination of our technology was an accident of your evolutionary barbarism. You will be contained, studied, and properly guided into civilization. Chen closed her eyes for a moment. They had all hoped it wouldn't come to this. You speak of civilization, she said quietly, but threatened genocide when faced with your own mistakes. High Commander, please reconsider. The consequences of forcing our hand will transform your society forever. You have no weapons that can harm our living ships, Eternal Dawn declared. Our bioorganic technology is self-repairing, adaptive, and millions of years beyond your understanding. You have 1 hour to surrender, or we will demonstrate true power. Chen cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Begin the countdown. Activate all Echo platforms on my mark. Throughout the solar system, hundreds of satellites oriented themselves toward the Meridian fleet. Each carried carefully engineered human biological markers, designed to amplify and direct the synchronization effect that had so terrified the Meridians. High Commander's flagship is powering weapons, Tactical reported. They're not waiting the hour. Of course not, Chen murmured. Their scans show no conventional weapons. They think we're bluffing. She straightened in her chair. Activate Echo Protocol. Full spectrum broadcast. The effect wasn't visible at first. The Meridian ships continued their advance, their weapon systems charging. But within minutes, alerts began flashing across the tactical display. Synchronization wave detected in their lid ships, Santos reported. Their living tech is responding faster than simulations predicted. On the main screen, the crystalline ships began to pulse with new patterns. Their bioorganic systems, exposed to the amplified human biological markers, began rapidly restructuring themselves. The process that had taken weeks with First Light's armor was happening in minutes. "They're firing," someone shouted. The Meridian flagship launched a beam of pure energy toward Earth, but halfway through its firing sequence, the living crystals channeling the power began to change. The beam flickered and died as the weapon systems synchronized with human patterns, becoming incompatible with their original design. "Multiple distress calls," Park announced. "Their ships, they're losing control of all bioorganic systems." Chen watched as the mighty Meridian fleet began to drift, their living technology transforming into something new, something that responded to human biological patterns instead of Meridian control signals. Eternal Dawn's face appeared on the screen again, his silver scales pale with shock. "What have you done?" he whispered. "Our ships, they no longer recognize us as pilots. The core systems are rewriting themselves." "We tried to warn you," Chen replied softly. "We tried to prevent this. Remember that in the days to come, when you tell others what happened here, remember that your own arrogance brought this moment into being." The Meridian fleet hung in space, their once mighty ships now dormant, their living technology transformed irreversibly by human biological patterns. As rescue ships from Earth moved to assist the stranded alien crews, Chen knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The Meridians had come to contain what they saw as a primitive biological aberration. Instead, they had forced humanity to demonstrate just how powerful that aberration could be. The age of Meridian technological supremacy was over, and a new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Station hummed with tension as representatives from 100 spacefaring civilizations gathered for an emergency session. Dr. Maya Patel stood at the speaking platform, Earth's first representative to this august body, facing a sea of alien faces filled with fear, anger, and fascination. The council speaker, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate crystalline shell, addressed the assembly. "We are here to address the unprecedented events in the Terra system, where human biological influence has fundamentally altered Meridian biotechnology. Dr. Patel will present Earth's testimony." Maya's voice remained steady as she spoke. 3 standard months ago, the Meridian Alliance threatened Earth with extinction. They intended to either enslave or destroy us because their own carelessness led to the discovery of human biological uniqueness. We defended ourselves using the only option they left us. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing the transformation of the Meridian fleet. Several representatives visibly recoiled as they watched the living ships change, their technology synchronizing with human biological patterns. "The effect appears to be spreading," a Zentari representative observed, their bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with concern. "Meridian colonies report their technology is gradually altering even without direct human contact." "Correct," Maya acknowledged. "The synchronization cascade is self-propagating through their network of living technology. We attempted to warn them of this possibility. They dismissed us as primitive and ignorant." The Meridian representative, no longer wearing their signature living armor, rose to speak. "You have crippled our civilization. Millions of years of biological engineering, rendered useless because our technology now only responds to human patterns. Your civilization threatened to sterilize our planet." Maya replied calmly. "You would have murdered billions because you refused to accept that a younger species might have biological traits you hadn't encountered before. The Echo Protocol was our last resort. A ripple of communication passed through the chamber as various species conferred with their allies. The implications were staggering. Humanity's biochemistry could potentially affect any sufficiently advanced biotechnology. The archival mind, oldest member of the council, spoke next. Its crystalline form shimmed with age and wisdom. We face an unprecedented situation. Humanity's ability to influence biological technology suggests they must be contained for the safety of all. Maya's expression hardened. With respect, honored archival mind, that kind of thinking led to this crisis. We do not wish to transform anyone's technology. We developed the Echo Protocol purely as a defensive measure, but if forced to defend ourselves again. The threat hung in the air. Every species present had some form of biotechnology in their civilization. The Meridians had been among the most advanced, and their entire technological base had been transformed in days. Perhaps, a new voice spoke, belonging to the Synthoid Collective. We should consider that the galaxy's dependence on biotechnology has created this vulnerability. The humans did not ask for this power. They did not seek to use it until threatened with extinction. Maya nodded gratefully to the artificial being. Earth wants peaceful cooperation, cultural exchange, and mutual respect. We're still a young species, still learning about the galaxy. But we've learned one thing very clearly. We will not be enslaved, controlled, or destroyed because our biology makes others uncomfortable. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some species called for immediate quarantine of Earth. Others suggested studying human biology to better understand and perhaps replicate their capabilities. A few voiced support for establishing diplomatic relations. As the arguments continued, Maya received a private message from Admiral Chen. More Meridian systems reporting technology transformation. Estimate total conversion within 1 standard year. How's the council taking it? Maya typed back. They're scared, Sarah. They should be. Everything they thought they knew about biological advancement just got appended by primitive humanity. The council speaker called for order. We will adjourn for deliberation, but let the record show. Humanity's defensive capability represents a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. The era of dismissing younger species as primitive may well be over. As Maya left the chamber, she passed the Meridian representative. The once proud alien looked at her with a mixture of fear and resignation. Was there no other way? They asked quietly. There was, Maya replied. You could have respected our warnings, treated us as equals despite our youth, and worked with us to understand this phenomenon. Instead, you chose arrogance. The transformation of your technology isn't just our defense mechanism. It's a lesson written in the language of biology itself. Above them, through the station's crystal dome, the galaxy spiraled in silent majesty. Somewhere out there, the ripples of change spread through Meridian space, their living technology gradually synchronizing with the biochemistry of a species they had dismissed as primitive. The balance of power was shifting, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again. 5 years after the Meridian incident, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in Earth's new galactic embassy, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the orbital station above. Each vessel was unique, some mechanical, others biological, many a hybrid of both. But all of them gave Earth's space a wide berth, maintaining strict quarantine protocols that humanity had once been mocked for suggesting. The Zinteri delegation has arrived, Dr. Maya Patel announced, joining her at the window. They're requesting permission to study our biological markers again, offering significant technological exchange this time. Chen smiled faintly. Remember when they called us primitive for not having biotech ships? Now they're redesigning their entire fleet to be purely mechanical. The galaxy had changed dramatically in the years following the Echo Protocol's deployment. The Meridian Alliance, once the dominant power in known space, had been transformed. Their living technology now responded only to human biological patterns, forcing them to rebuild their civilization around mechanical alternatives. Latest reports from Meridian space? Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. Maya brought up a holographic display, complete transformation of all their biological technology. But they're adapting better than expected. Their younger generation is actually embracing the change, seeing it as an opportunity to rebuild their society without the arrogance that defined their past. A notification flashed on the display. Another trade request, this time from the Synthoid Collective. They had become humanity's strongest allies, their purely artificial nature making them immune to biological influence. Their analytical minds had been the first to recognize that humanity's primitive quarantine protocols had actually been far ahead of their time. The archival mind is requesting a meeting, Maya said, reading another message. They want to discuss the possibility of controlled biological synchronization for medical applications. Apparently, some human biological patterns show promise in treating degenerative conditions in crystalline life forms. Chen turned from the window. Who would have thought? Our primitive biology might end up advancing medical science across the galaxy. She paused, considering. Have we heard anything from First Light? Maya nodded, still serving as an ambassador, but now between young species and the established powers. The transformation of his living armor apparently gave him some unique insights. He's become quite the advocate for treating emerging civilizations with respect. They walked together through the embassy, passing representatives from dozens of species. The fear that had initially greeted humanity after the Meridian incident had gradually given way to cautious cooperation. Earth's biological influence had forced the galaxy to reevaluate its assumptions about technological progress and species development. The Galactic Council is voting next week on the Young Species Protection Act, Maya mentioned. It would prohibit technological coercion or forced uplifting of any emerging civilization. The Meridians are co-sponsoring it, if you can believe that. Amazing what a little perspective can do, Chen replied. Though I doubt anyone will be attempting forced uplifting again anytime soon. Not after seeing what a primitive species can do when cornered. They reached the embassy's central chamber, where a piece of transformed meridian crystal was displayed. It pulsed gently with patterns that matched human biological rhythms, a reminder of the power that humanity had never wanted but had been forced to use. Do you ever regret it? Maya asked quietly, deploying the Echo Protocol. Chen was silent for a moment, watching the crystal pulse. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that their arrogance and our power collided in such a devastating way. But mostly, I regret that they couldn't see us as equals until we proved we could be a threat. And now? Now we have an opportunity and a responsibility. We've shown the galaxy that age doesn't equal wisdom, that progress isn't always linear, and that dismissing young species as primitive is a dangerous mistake. Chen turned to face her friend. Our biology might have forced the galaxy to change, but our humanity will determine what that change means. Outside the embassy, Earth rotated serenely. Ships from across the galaxy moved through its space, each maintaining careful protocols that had once been dismissed as primitive paranoia. The Meridian incident had taught the galaxy many lessons, but perhaps the most important was this. True civilization isn't measured by technological advancement or age, but by the wisdom to respect and learn from others, regardless of their apparent primitiveness. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon hadn't been their unique biology. It had been the humility to recognize their own potential for both creation and destruction. The galaxy was changing, and for the first time in millions of years, the future belonged not to the oldest or most advanced, but to those wise enough to learn from the past while embracing the uncertainty of tomorrow. The age of arrogance was over. The age of understanding had begun.